Aquarius, the 11th sign of the Zodiac, represented by a gentleman carrying a water jug and a symbol of two watery waves. Despite this, it still manages to be an air sign. Go figure. It's the sign that runs from January the 20th to February the 18th, a time of Valentine cards, thick waterproof jackets, and the groundhog, who seems to see more of his shadow every year. But Aquarius is more than disappointing heart-shaped chocolates. It's the sign of caring deeply about humanity while maintaining a sensible emotional distance from it. It's the sign of imagining a better world, then wondering why no one's implemented it yet. So grab your megaphone, your soapbox, and your placard, because the cosmos is about to get ideas. Aquarius is one of those signs everyone thinks they understand, right up until they try to explain it out loud. It's the water bearer that isn't a water sign, the rebel that somehow follows very specific rules, and the humanitarian who occasionally forgets to text back for 3 weeks. Aquarius is fixed air, traditionally ruled by Saturn. It's got a reputation for being detached, eccentric, and a little bit contrarian, progressive, idealistic, and allergic to nonsense, especially other people's nonsense. In this episode, we're going to unpack Aquarius from the inside out. We'll dig into its history, mythology, psychology, personality quirks, and cosmic contradictions. We'll look at the correspondences, the tarot, the gems, and a herbal elixir that promises to take humanity into a new age, or give everyone diarrhea. But first, our fool is about to cross paths with a sign that's extremely progressive, until it isn't.
The Fool's Odyssey.
The Fool is still making his way through the Zodiac signs on the Cosmic Constellation Express.
Now approaching Aquarius. This station is currently undergoing systemic reform.
As the Fool steps off the train, he finds himself before a man standing on a box, holding a water jug and shouting into a megaphone.
All Zodiac signs are equal. No more favourites. End elemental bias.
What's all this about then?
I'm campaigning for equal rights for air signs. Fire signs get all the attention. Earth signs hoard all the resources. Water signs are allowed to have feelings, while air signs are misunderstood.
How are you misunderstood?
Take Aquarius. We're the sign of ideas, of progress, of looking at the system and asking why it's built like this. This isn't about ego, it's about humanity, about fairness, about making sure no one gets left behind just because they were born under the wrong constellation. But most of all, it's about people. Hey, what the bloody hell are all these people doing here?
We're campaigning for equal rights for soapboxes. Get off that box, it's tired of being stood on.
But it's an inanimate object.
Don't oppress us with your definitions of personhood. We're also campaigning for megaphones. Put it down, it's tired of being shouted at.
But it isn't alive.
You don't get to decide what counts as lived experience.
In the interests of fairness, the soapbox and megaphone are promptly confiscated and taken away for a sit-down and a drink.
This isn't what I meant. Obviously, I don't support the systemic abuse of wooden boxes or amplification equipment. I was just trying to get my point across. This is a clear example of being silenced by the system. Something must be done. I'm going to start a petition.
Equal rights for petitions.
Well, before you do that, do you think you could stamp my ticket, please?
Right, yes, of course. But just so you know, this system is deeply flawed.
I'll bear that in mind.
Now then, who feels underrepresented by rubber stamps?
Aquarius teaches us that progress begins with ideas, and sometimes it ends there. The Fool finds his way back to the train to continue his odyssey. To be continued. And now we return to the buttocks of destiny, where progress, reform, and several well-meaning protests have left our Fool somewhat bewildered, returning our arrow to the centre and pointing straight at the dark tea towel holder. Has the Fool glimpsed the future or got lost in the mud? Find out next time on The Fool's Odyssey. The history of Aquarius. Our earliest historical dive on Aquarius comes from Astronomica, written in the early 1st century. Marcus Manilius tried to map the entire cosmos as a rational, ordered system, governed by fate and divine intelligence. He said, "And young Aquarius pouring out his stream, here spreads a watery, there an earthy beam. How shall these things, yet they reward thy pain? Reasons in all, and nothing's framed in vain." Manilius describes Aquarius as pouring out both a watery and an earthy influence. On the surface that sounds contradictory, but that's kind of the point. Water nourishes the earth and makes civilization possible. And when Manilius says reason's in all and nothing's framed in vain, he's saying that every sign has a role within a rational, ordered cosmos. Aquarius sustains systems larger than any one person. In the next century we find Claudius Ptolemy's writings on Aquarius in Tetrabiblos. He loved to massively overcomplicate things when it came to planets, and Aquarius is no exception. As a result, Ptolemy doesn't give Aquarius a single ruler at all. Instead, he describes a whole cornucopia of planetary influences, with different stars in the constellation behaving like Saturn, Mercury, and even Jupiter depending on where you look. He said the stars in the shoulders of Aquarius operate like Saturn and Mercury. Those in the left hand and those in the face do the same. Those in the thighs have an influence more consonant with that of Mercury, and in a less degree with that of Saturn. Those in the stream of water have power similar to that of Saturn and moderately to that of Jupiter. Thankfully, over time things became a bit more streamlined, and Aquarius settled into Saturn as its traditional ruler. Then later on, with the discovery of Uranus, modern astrology added a second layer. This is why Aquarius has two planetary rulers. Jumping forward to the Renaissance and the writings of Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, we find Aquarius' angel to be Cambiel. This angel is also known as Gabriel or Cambriel, but these are variant forms that underline the same name root. Cambiel rules the ascending aspect of Aquarius, and the name translates to exalter and maker of God. In the naughty corner, and according to Eliphas Levi, we've got Sakmachiel. Now I know that sounds like it's being said by a snake, and maybe that's the whole point. In any case, the name in Hebrew translates to either brightness of God or foulness of God, depending on which one you prefer. This tells you a lot about how flexible demon names tend to be. Anyway, in Levi's system, Sakmachiel governs the descending aspect of Aquarius.
The mythology of Aquarius.
In the ancient world, Aquarius went beyond an abstract symbol. It was a veritable god. In Babylonian astrology, Aquarius was identified as Gu-La, the Great One, and represented the god Ea himself. He's almost always shown holding an overflowing vase, pouring water endlessly into the world. Ea ruled the southernmost quarter of the sun's path, known as the Way of Ea, which centered on the winter solstice. This marked a dangerous time of year, associated with destructive floods that could wipe out crops and settlements. So while the image is familiar, the meaning was darker. In ancient Egypt, the pouring water symbolism carried on, but in a much more benevolent form. Aquarius was linked to the annual flooding of the Nile. When the water bearer poured his jar into the river, the banks overflowed, renewing the land and making agriculture possible. We can see this on the DENDERA Zodiac, where Aquarius is shown pouring water from two jugs. For the Egyptians, this flooding marked the beginning of the growing season and the rebirth of life itself. As usual, the ancient Greeks couldn't quite make up their minds about this one. Aquarius gets passed around like a communal cup at a symposium. One version links the constellation to Deucalion, the son of Prometheus, who survived a great flood by building a ship with his wife Pyrrha. Another more popular version identifies Aquarius with Ganymede, a fit Trojan youth who caught the eye of Zeus. According to the legend, Zeus sent an eagle to abduct Ganymede and carry him off to Mount Olympus, where he became the cupbearer to the gods, pouring wine and nectar for eternity. The nearby constellation Aquila conveniently fills in as the eagle that did the snatching. And if that feels too dramatic, there's also Cecrops I, a king of Athens who was said to have honoured the gods by offering water instead of wine. I'll be honest, I wouldn't feel particularly honoured if I was offered water instead of wine, but maybe the gods were doing dry January. So by the time the Greeks are finished with Aquarius, he's been a flood survivor, a kidnapped prince, a divine bartender, and a king making a sober offering to keep everybody on the wagon.
The psychology of Aquarius.
Now, whenever Carl Jung shows up, things tend to get psychological very quickly, so let's shift gears for a moment and look at Aquarius through that lens. He said 5,000 years ago, 3000 BC, when the sun was in winter, there were floods of rain. Aquarius walked about, pouring his water out right and left. So he's obviously drawing on the earlier traditions of floods that we were just talking about, but what he's getting at here is memory rather than mythology. Over thousands of years, that seasonal experience was personified, so Aquarius became the figure who pours water everywhere, because that's what winter felt like. Next he moves on to fertility, because he's Carl Jung, so of course he does. He says, but the new year has to be generated. The sun generates the year in Aquarius. Aquarius pours out the waters of fecundity. He's also known as a phallic god, like Priapus. When Jung says the new year is generated in Aquarius, he's speaking symbolically rather than astronomically. Aquarius represents the point in the seasonal cycle where something new is conceived, even though it hasn't yet taken shape. The waters of fecundity refer to fertility in the broadest sense, the release of creative and psychological potential that allows new life and ideas to emerge later on. And when Jung compares Aquarius to a phallic god like Priapus, he's emphasizing generative power rather than sexuality, the raw creative force that brings something new into existence before it becomes visible. He goes on to say, after the generating water, the fishes come again, and so on around. This is how the Zodiac came into existence. It is really a seasonal cycle with particular qualities of climate: winter, spring, summer, autumn, qualified by the fantasies and metaphorical imagination of the human mind. Here Jung zooms out and explains what the Zodiac really is. After Aquarius releases the generative waters, Pisces follows, and then the cycle continues again and again. For Jung, the Zodiac was a way of mapping the seasons themselves. Each sign reflects a particular quality of climate, filtered through the human imagination. The symbols don't describe the sky so much as our psychological response to the rhythms of nature. In Jungian terms, the Aquarian archetype lives in the psyche as a drive toward renewal and future possibility. This shapes how Aquarians instinctively imagine and orient themselves toward what comes next.
The personality of Aquarius.
As ever, before we talk about Aquarius as a person, it helps to look at the architecture of the sign itself. This is the underlying structure that shapes how the sign works. First up, Aquarius has a positive polarity, or you could call it yang or masculine if you prefer. This means its energy is outward facing and expressive rather than receptive. Yang signs tend to act on the world rather than absorb it, so that's initiating ideas, projecting opinions, and engaging actively with what's happening around them. It's a fixed sign, which means its energy is steady and resistant to change. Fixed signs are concerned with maintaining and developing what already exists rather than starting from scratch. So once they've formed a position, they tend to hold on to it. Now it's time to talk about the cosmic elephant in the room. Despite all evidence to the contrary, Aquarius is in fact an air sign. Don't blame me, I don't make the rules. In any case, there's a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, on a practical level, Aquarius is an air sign because the Zodiac is built on a repeating elemental sequence. It always goes in the order of fire, earth, air and water. By the time you reach Aquarius, air is the only element that fits without breaking the whole structure of the wheel, and we certainly don't want to do that. Secondly, Aquarius is an air sign because it doesn't embody water, it contains it. Water represents emotion and knowledge, and Aquarius' role is to hold that water at arm's length, analyse it, and then distribute it to the wider world, which is why Aquarians tend to process life intellectually rather than emotionally. Now for the ruling planets. Yes, that's planets because there's two of them. This is one of those times when astrology quietly admits that it changed its mind halfway through history. So traditionally we've got Saturn, the planet of structure, rules, boundaries, consequences, and all that boring stuff. But of course there's more to it than that. If you've watched any of my other videos, you might have heard me refer to Saturn as the tough love teacher, in the sense that Saturn doesn't punish you for no reason. It shows you where reality pushes back, so it rewards patience, responsibility, long-term effort, and it is absolutely ruthless about exposing shortcuts that don't work. Then in the modern era, astrology discovered Uranus. Uranus is associated with disruption, innovation, sudden change and breaking systems that no longer work. But rather than politely asking Saturn to leave, modern astrology added Uranus as a second ruler. The result is Aquarius having two planetary influences that are constantly at odds with each other.
Behold, I bring structure.
Let's burn it down and try something new.
And that tension is the Aquarian personality in a nutshell. This is where it gets its reputation of being a revolutionary. But rather than rebelling for fun, it rebels because it thinks things could be better. So the good news is that Aquarians are said to be able to see the big picture. You're very good at spotting patterns, understanding systems, and thinking 10 steps ahead of everyone else. Aquarians are often the only person in the room saying, "Hang on, have we considered this?" while everyone else is still figuring out where to hang their coats. You care deeply about fairness, progress, and how things should work. Very good at standing back from emotional chaos and making decisions based on principles rather than impulse. When Aquarius is at its best, it's visionary, intelligent and way ahead of its time. The bad news is that while you're busy thinking 10 steps ahead, you occasionally leave everyone else behind. Aquarius can come across as detached, aloof or emotionally unavailable, not because you don't care, but because you're processing everything intellectually first. So yes, Aquarius is innovative, idealistic and future focused, but it can also be stubborn, contrarian and occasionally convinced it's the smartest person in the room, which to be fair it usually is. Moving on to health and the Zodiac Man, a symbolic map that links each sign to a part of the anatomy. In Aquarius' case, that's traditionally the lower legs, ankles and circulation. So themes here tend to be movement, flow and how energy travels through the system as a whole. Marcus Manilius puts it like this: the parted legs in moist Aquarius meet. Thank you Manilius, that's very helpful. I think what he's trying to describe, in the least subtle way possible, is Aquarius' association with circulation and the lower limbs. But this is also a perfect reminder that ancient astrologers didn't have editors, HR departments, or any sense of shame. When it comes to money, Aquarius has opinions. On the one hand, Aquarians are brilliant at ideas. They're forward-thinking, inventive, and often drawn to careers involving technology, science, social reform, or anything that sounds like it could change the world. Aquarius is the sign most likely to invent something revolutionary, give it away for free, and then be vaguely surprised when the rent is due. You're often the person in the meeting saying, "What if we just scrap this entire process?" which is either visionary or terrifying, depending on who's paying you. In relationships, Aquarius is loyal, idealistic and deeply committed, just not always in the way people expect. Aquarians tend to approach romance as a meeting of minds first and foremost. You want connection, conversation and shared values. If you can't talk to someone for hours about ideas, principles or that one documentary you watched at 2 AM, the spark tends to fizzle pretty quickly. When Aquarius commits, it's genuine. You're not interested in possession or control, you want partnership, equality and freedom to be yourselves. You're very supportive of your partner's independence, sometimes to the point where they're wondering if you still remember who they are. Aquarians also have a habit of being unintentionally contradictory. You want closeness but not clinginess, depth but not drama, intensity but only on your terms, which can leave partners feeling like they're dating someone who's very loving, very sincere, but occasionally broadcasting from a different frequency. However, at its best, Aquarius love is honest, respectful and excited for the future. And with that in mind, let's see how Aquarius fares in the most unrealistic dating show of all time.
Welcome back to Star-Crossed. This week's hopeful bachelor is Aquarius, visionary, contrarian and emotionally fluent. In theory, he's looking for connection, but preferably without too much intensity. Let's meet our 3 hopefuls. Will it be Aries, bold, impulsive and already bored of this introduction? Or perhaps Virgo, observant, thoughtful and quietly assessing everyone's posture? Finally, there's Cancer, warm, intuitive and emotionally invested in this process. Possibly too early. Aquarius, it's time to ask your big question.
My question is, what do you value most in a relationship and how do you handle disagreements?
I value honesty and momentum. If there's a problem, we deal with it immediately, loudly, and then we move on.
Ooh. I value communication and growth. I'll listen carefully, reflect, and suggest improvements. I've already made some notes.
I value emotional safety. I'll support you, understand you, and remember exactly how this moment made me feel.
Well, Aquarius, it's decision time.
I think I'm going to choose Aries. She seems decisive and statistically unlikely to overanalyze my feelings.
A meeting of air and fire. This will either spark radical change or burn out in a passionate argument about nothing in particular. And now let's see what happens when astrology meets swipe culture in Star-Crossed Tinder edition.
I value comfort, loyalty and a slow, steady connection.
That sounds immovable.
Curious, communicative, and always up for something new.
A compatible operating system.
Confident, passionate, and looking to be adored.
I respect the branding. I reject the demand.
I just want harmony, fairness, and a good conversation.
Diplomatic and interesting. Promising.
I want depth, intensity, and total honesty.
That feels binding.
Freedom, adventure, and no labels.
Yes, ethically non-attached.
Ambitious, serious, and planning long term.
Impressive. Slightly alarming.
I feel everything deeply and intuitively.
I support this. From a distance.
Independent, unconventional, and emotionally available, in principle.
Finally, someone who understands the assignment.
The constellation of Aquarius.
Astronomically speaking, Aquarius is an equatorial constellation, sitting right along the zodiac between Capricornus and Pisces. Its name comes from the Latin term for water carrier or cupbearer, which explains why its astrological symbol looks like waves. What's especially interesting is where Aquarius lives in the sky. It sits in a region often nicknamed the Sea, surrounded by other watery constellations like Cetus the whale, Eridanus the river, and Pisces the fish. So even astronomically, Aquarius is floating around as part of a larger aquatic neighbourhood, which makes the whole question, why is this an air sign, even more confusing. Despite its prominent position on the zodiac and its sheer size, Aquarius is surprisingly unimpressive to look at. It has no particularly bright stars, so nothing in Aquarius really jumps out at you in the night sky. However, while Aquarius may not look like much on the surface, it turns out there's quite a lot going on behind the scenes. Astronomers identified at least a dozen known exoplanetary systems within the boundaries of Aquarius, so that's stars with planets orbiting them. Now, to be very clear, this does not mean Aquarius is the alien sign. There is absolutely no evidence of little green men, flying saucers, or advanced civilizations trying to contact us through crop circles. But if there was, then I reckon it would be in Aquarius, so we should probably keep an eye on it.
I saw an alien on the way to the shop today. How do you know it was on its way to the shop?
While we're here, it's also worth mentioning the Saturn Nebula, which sits within the constellation of Aquarius. It gets its name from its ring-like appearance, which early astronomers thought resembled Saturn. It's a planetary nebula, meaning it's the glowing remains of a star shedding its outer layers. Given Saturn's traditional rulership of Aquarius, it's a neat little astronomical echo hiding in plain sight. For those of us following sidereal astrology, if you were born between February the 13th and February the 18th, you're an Aquarius in both systems. If you were born between January the 20th and February the 12th, then you'd be considered a Capricorn in sidereal astrology.
Correspondence Corner!
As ever, we're kicking off with the corresponding tarot cards, and for Aquarius that gives us the 5, 6 and 7 of Swords, the Knight of Swords and the King of Cups, the Page and the Ace of Swords, and the Star is Aquarius Major Arcana card. The 5 of Swords, covering January 20th to January 29th, is Venus in Aquarius. This is where harmony meets detachment. Venus wants connection, Aquarius wants principles, so the result is conflict driven by ideas rather than emotion. You've won the argument, proved the point, but now no one wants to talk to you. The 6 of Swords from January 30th to February the 8th is Mercury in Aquarius. This is where movement meets intellect. Mercury wants understanding, Aquarius wants objectivity, so the result is a mental transition, leaving old patterns behind, gaining perspective, and moving toward calmer ground through clarity rather than emotion. The 7 of Swords, covering February the 9th to February the 18th, is the Moon in Aquarius. This is where emotion meets detachment. The Moon wants safety and feeling, Aquarius wants independence, so the result is emotional distance and strategic thinking. Acting quietly, keeping feelings private, and doing what you think makes sense, even if you're not ready to explain it to anyone yet. The Knight of Swords spans January the 10th to February the 8th, carrying Capricorn into Aquarius, but here the energy shifts in tone. We're talking speed, conviction, ideas being acted on and defended. Once this knight is moving, he's not stopping to check who's still keeping up. From February the 9th to March the 10th, we move into the King of Cups as Aquarius begins to give way to Pisces. This introduces emotional maturity and calm authority, but filtered through Aquarius's detachment. Feeling is present, but it's controlled and observed. Just like Capricorn, Aquarius also receives the Ace and Page of Swords. The Ace brings clarity, truth and decisive thinking. The Page acts curiosity, learning and mental experimentation. Together they underline Aquarius's analytical nature, its love of ideas and its constant drive to understand how things work. Finally, Aquarius's Major Arcana card is the Star, and it's one of the clearest pairings in the whole deck. The Star is about hope, renewal and faith in the future. After disruption, collapse or upheaval, this card represents the quiet moment where perspective returns and something better becomes possible through clarity. That fits Aquarius perfectly. The figure pours the water out deliberately and calmly, echoing the water bearer symbolism we've been following all along. One stream returns to the earth, sustaining the world. The other flows into the water, feeding the collective. We're talking about steady, principled hope, the belief that things can improve if we're willing to think differently and aim higher. That's very Aquarian, future-facing, idealistic, and quietly confident that the system can be repaired. Moving on to the Kabbalistic tree of life, Aquarius corresponds to the 28th path and the Hebrew letter Sadi, which means fishhook. This path connects Netzach, the sphere of desire, instinct and emotional drive, with Yesod, the sphere of imagination, symbolism and the subconscious. In other words, this path is about drawing something up from below the surface. Just like a fish hook, it reaches into unseen depths and pulls latent material into awareness. That fits Aquarius well. Psychologically, this path describes the movement from feeling and impulse into patterns, ideas, and internal models of reality. It's where emotional energy gets abstracted, organized, and prepared to enter the conscious world. Now for the gemstones, and once again I'm doing this section with Otter Spirit, who make wonderful gemstone jewellery inspired by astrology. They've put together an amazing selection for Aquarius. These are just a few examples from the whole collection. Don't forget you can get a 20% discount with the code KIPPY20. And if you're feeling particularly generous to your future self, there's also KIPPY30 for a 30% discount on orders over $100. First up, we've got Amethyst for intuition. This is all about insight, clarity and tuning into subtle patterns. It supports Aquarius' natural ability to think abstractly and see connections others might miss. Next is Aquamarine for healing. This stone brings calm, clarity and emotional balance, helping Aquarius soften without feeling overwhelmed. It's particularly useful for clearing mental noise and letting thoughts flow more freely. Then we've got Smoky Quartz for protection. This is a grounding stone that helps Aquarius stay connected to reality while dealing with big ideas and collective concerns. It's excellent for filtering out mental overload, stress and other people's nonsense. Finally, there's Purple Fluorite for balance. This supports mental organization and focus. It's especially good for balancing inspiration with practicality, so brilliant concepts actually make it out of your head and into the world. Now for the herbs. We're exactly halfway through the Zodiac series now, and I can confidently report that I'm officially starting to go insane trying to come up with ways to present these, but my Capricorn stubbornness is forcing me forward. As such, this week we're joined by our very own pharmaceutical scientist, Dr. Ulysses Neuralis, who is currently attempting to invent what he calls the elixir of everything, a universal remedy designed to cure the modern condition and usher humanity into a bold new age.
Welcome to the Department of Human Optimization. Humanity is tired, anxious, overstimulated, deeply opinionated. I'm working on a formula that's designed to address all of that simultaneously. First, we've got vervain, traditionally used for inspiration, ritual and divine madness. Included here to encourage original thinking while discouraging conspiracy theories. Next comes wood betony, excellent for nervous tension and excessive mental looping. It won't stop you overthinking, but it will make the overthinking feel enjoyable. While cherry bark is added to soothe the emotional cough that develops after reading the news.
Is that a thing?
It is now. Saw palmetto supports physical vitality. If we're going to redesign civilization, the body should at least keep up. St. John's wort is included to lift the mood and restore meaning. Side effects may include sudden clarity and the urge to reorganize society. Finally, skullcap, a nervine for minds that refuse to power down. It tells the brain that the future can wait until morning.
And does this elixir of everything work?
Briefly.
How briefly?
About 12 seconds. Test subjects tend to rush to the toilet after that.
Kippy's Quest. Kippy's Quest.
So by the time we get to the end of Aquarius, it's hard not to notice how many contradictions are packed into one sign. It's detached but idealistic, rebellious but strangely fixed in its opinions, emotionally cool yet deeply invested in how the world should work. It's a sign of big ideas, future thinking, and systems that look brilliant on paper, even if the practical details are still pending. Aquarius doesn't always show up warmly or conveniently, but it does show up with principles, and it takes those principles seriously. And when you strip away all the idealism and the contrarian streak, what's left underneath is a genuine concern for people. Aquarius isn't fighting for attention or approval, it's fighting for a world that makes sense, one that works for everyone, not just the loudest or the luckiest. Morgan Fairchild once said, one of the hallmarks of the sign of Aquarius is the campaign for justice. Everyone is my brother. Justice is very important to me.
Thank you for joining us on this hopeful step into tomorrow. May your ideas be bold, your principles be fair, and your water jug never run dry. Until next time.